Welcome to the shop. Steve here at SKS Props, and today's video is going to be a little bit out of the norm for my channel. I'm going to be reviewing a 3D resin printer and a curing and washing station from Anycubic. Now I'm sure you're asking yourself, what is a Foamsmith doing with a 3D resin printer? And you're not entirely wrong. I mean, if you followed me for the last couple of years, you know that I do a ton of builds out of EVA foam, and I love this particular medium. I love it so much that I created my own line, which you of course can purchase over at Blick Art Materials. But before I was a foamsmith, almost all the props that I created were hand sculpted and resin cast. I love the artistic ability of being able to hand sculpt. It's very zen to me, and having resin as a medium is great because it holds all those intricate little details, plus it's very strong, so it works great for cosplay. As an artist, I'm always trying to add to my bag of tricks, and so I went to school for illustration, so I know how to draw. I've been hand sculpting, I've been foam fabricating. 3D printing and 3D digital sculpting is something I've wanted to learn for a long time, but they did not have this technology available when I went to school. So there's a lot goes into it, right? I mean, you've got your programs, then you have not only just sculpting it, but then learning how to print it, learning how to slice it, add your supports, cleaning, washing. There's a lot. And it's been very difficult to find the time to be able to do this over the last couple of years. Up until 2020, and we haven't had any conventions. So, with no conventions in my scheduling, I've been teaching myself ZBrush behind the scenes. And this was the very first thing that I created in ZBrush. It is a little bat demon creature. I didn't really have a reference for this, I was just playing around with the program. And I can tell you that having something physically in my hand right now is an amazing thing. The fact that you can create something digitally, print it out, and have a physical representation of it is so cool. And not long ago, I created something a little more complicated. I did a little baby Grogu in a pram as an ornament. Now this one was a lot more difficult to create because I had to base it off of a reference image. It wasn't just making up whatever came to me. But I learned a ton from this, and this is the kind of technique that I feel that I can utilize in my props and costumes in the future. Plus, another thing I want to point out right now is that I have a free STL file for this little ornament, so if you want to download and print off your own, you can. That link will be over in the description section. So what this video is going to do is not really going over the ZBrush techniques because I don't know those. I am still very, very new. There's lots of channels that can teach you that. I just want to show kind of what I did in ZBrush, but more importantly, how someone that is a complete noob to 3D was able to take it, print it out, clean it up, and have physical representations of those digital models in the end. So let's go ahead and jump into the video. So here's the pram that I designed in ZBrush. I used a lot of primitives to try to replicate the hard surface sculpt. While Grogu was sculpted using clay buildup. These models were then combined and scaled for the final ornament file. Then I got to open and start to set up my Anycubic Photon S. Honestly, the instructions and setup were pretty straightforward. The first thing I did was take out the resin vat so I could apply some lubricant. Now I learned this trick from Uncle Jesse, and it's supposed to keep the resin print from sticking to the FEP sheet. The lubricant was applied to a paper towel and then wiped onto the sheet. Next I have to set up the zero tolerance for the build plate, so I go ahead and attach that to the motorized support arm on the back. Then a piece of paper is laid over the screen and the build plate is lowered until I have slight resistance. Now that the zero is set, I can do a check test on the screen. Once that checks out, the resin vat can be put back into place and secured. The pram file is on a USB drive that gets loaded into the side, and now I can add my resin. For my first test print, I'm going to be using a clear, tinted green resin. I fill up about 1/3 of the vat, go ahead and select my print and press start. This pram print is going to be right under 5 hours for the total processing time. Then the build plate gets lowered into the resin and it starts to do the printing process. This is sped up on camera just to show the movement of the build plate. Once the printing process is complete, the build plate moves to the top of the machine. This can be taken off and any excess resin that's built up on the top can now be dripped back into the vat. For the washing station, I use 2 bottles of 91% isopropyl alcohol. This is poured into the provided container that has a little fan on the bottom. The build plate can then be attached to the extension arm that comes with the wash station, and you can see what the model looks like before its bath. The build plate and model are submerged into the alcohol. This is fully adjustable, and it also comes with a basket in case you didn't want to use the build plate. After the support arm is secured, the lid is placed back on top and I select wash on the front panel. This also allows you to choose how long you want it to wash, and then you just press start. The little propeller in the bottom of the container will start to spin, and it honestly creates quite a bit of force. About midway through, it will reverse direction. To prep the model, I get out a silicone mat so I don't mess up the top of my workstation. The washing station did a great job removing the excess resin from the piece. The washing container comes with its own securable lid, which can be closed and set aside. The model now needs to be removed from the build plate, so I use a plastic spatula to do that. And it can be a little bit difficult. I think I'm going to look into getting some of the magnetic bendable plates that I've seen online. And I know what a bunch of you are thinking, and yes, I have started a prototype for a magnetic base. Once free from the build plate, I go ahead and remove some of the supports before it goes through the full curing process. The curing station comes with a clear platform that slides right into the base of the unit. This will spin so there's even distribution of the light. The lid can be put back on, and this time I select Cure. I also select the time that I want and then press Start. And now that the model is cured, all the additional supports can now be removed. To do this, I use some flat hobby snips that I found worked best to get right up to the model. So what's left are the little nubs from the supports, and I wet sanded those to make the bottom of the piece completely smooth. So when it comes to transparent resins, you want to use some kind of a gloss sealer on the model. That will allow that resin to keep that transparent look and be crystal clear. This little model turned out great, and I also printed one in a gray resin just to show more of the details. And remember, this little Pram model is free to download, so head over to the description section for the link. So you all can see how a noob like me figured out some ZBrush techniques, but then was able to utilize the Anycubic Photon S to print it off, and utilize their curing and washing station to finally have a physical copy of my digital illustration in hand. And this is so awesome. Again, I can't wait to utilize these types of techniques in my props and costumes, or to make some more miniatures or little tiny figures. That's going to be awesome as well. The thing that's great about that, even if you're not really good at creating your own things digitally, there are a ton of different websites where you can download other people's creations and still utilize a printer like this Photon S, very inexpensive for what it is. I mean, honestly, I could not believe the amount of detail that came out on this for this price. Now, hopefully this video was helpful to you. If it was, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and until next time, thanks for stopping by.